Welcome in to Kick in the Rear podcast, episode 3, where we dive into the real estate investment review. My name is Joe Yarshin, and today we're going to be reviewing the 10X Rule by Mr. Grant Cardone, one of my favorites. Right away, I want to start off saying that Grant Cardone is one of my favorite entrepreneurs and businessmen, and he's just a great salesman all around. He exudes this energy of positive alpha energy, no excuses. He's totally against that victim mentality, just very self-starter, accountability, you name it. He's the guy. So I would like to start off by saying the 10X rule. It's hard to say 10 out of 10 because, again, a lot of the books I'm going to be reviewing are great. Not all of them get a perfect score. He gets a perfect score because this one really just was short and sweet, easy to read. The chapter breakdown was very short. I was able to pick it up and, start again, when I had time to read this one. And really he just makes it so simple, no nonsense, and very, very motivating, to say the least. So I would characterize this book again in maybe a mindset book, but it's beyond a mindset at this point. It's really an actionable book from just some of the tidbits he shares. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so I'd like to start off reading a couple of the quotes that I liked from this. And I won't read them all, but I will read you some of them just because I love them. Very to the point. As long as you're alive, you will either live to accomplish your own goals and dreams or be used as a resource to accomplish someone else's. Powerful stuff here. I suggest you become obsessed about the things you want. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lifetime being obsessed with making up excuses as to why you didn't get the life you wanted. All the excuses in the world won't change one simple fact: that fear is a sign to do whatever it is you fear and do it quickly. One of the major differences between successful and unsuccessful people is that the former look for problems to resolve, whereas the latter make every attempt to avoid them. Wake up. No one is going to save you. No one is going to take care of your family or your retirement. No one is going to make things work out for you. The only way to do so is to utilize every moment of every day at 10x levels. Average is a failing plan. Average doesn't work in any area of life. Anything that you give away, anything that you give only average amounts of attention to will start to subside and eventually cease to exist. Success tends to bless those who are most committed to giving it the most attention. It is better to make something happen, good or bad, than to have it happen to you. So very against victim mentality, create your own success, create your own luck, create your own habits. Don't be confused what looks like luck to you. Lucky people don't make successful people. People who completely commit themselves to success seem to get lucky in life. So just reaffirming that. I would rather fail pushing forward than in retreat. I think he's paraphrasing somebody famous there. I feel like I've heard that quote before. Criticism precedes admiration, and like it or not, goes hand in hand with success. Treating success as an option is one of the major reasons why more people don't create it for themselves and why most people don't even get close to living up to their full potential. So, I could go on. This book had 20, 30, 40 quotes that were just like that. So let's move into some of the chapter breakdowns and then we'll go on from there. So in chapter 1, Grant Cardone goes into what is the 10X rule. He explains it many different ways, through success, through having a plan, through, becoming actionable with your intentions. He goes really, he kind of goes overboard with it in a great way. And then in chapter 2, He explains why the 10X rule is important. At every breakdown of each chapter, he actually writes down 3 actionable steps for the chapter, which I think is really great. It keeps it very interactive. So at the end of each chapter, you'll see a blank space for an exercise and notes for you to write down to answer the 3 or 4 questions that he has in every chapter. He tries to define what is success. In chapter 3, he goes into, what it looks like, who he studied that makes it impossible to not define what success is. He's very obvious. Okay. So chapter 4 talks about success is your duty. He really ties this into family orientation a lot. Just like, hey, if you have a family, if you have a wife and kids or whatever, and you're responsible for other people, it becomes your duty to become successful. So it's not even a mindset. It's not a goal. It's like, hey, I have to be successful in order to be a provider, in order to be the person in my family. Reminds me again of Ed Milet back in episode 1 when we were talking about the power of one more. Chapter 5, there's no shortage of success. Really, I underlined this page on 37 here. He says, success is your ethical duty. So kind of what I was saying before, but like this is probably the most powerful sentences. Success is your ethical duty. Once you have the framework of that, it's just like, it takes all the excuses away. So love that. Chapter 6, Grant Cardone talks about assuming control for everything. Again, he's very against victim mentality. He quotes his previous book that he published, If You're Not First, You're Last. He goes into some personal examples there, what it means to assume control and to, in his words, don't be a little bitch. It's a little harsh, and it might be not always politically correct, but I don't care. I think he does a great job explaining what it means to assume control in your life. Success is something that happens to you. It's not something that happens to you. It's because of you, rather. He says, write 3 examples of what made success happen and where it didn't just happen to you. And then talking about 4 consistent factors in the life of a victim. He talks about that. Chapter 7, 4 degrees of action. So I did write some notes in here. Here's the 4 degrees of action. He says you can either do nothing, you could retreat, you can take normal levels of action, or you can take massive action. And so that's what this book focuses on, is taking massive action, not even just normal levels of action. He says people in this group of do nothing, they find themselves spending their time and energy justifying situations, which requires as much work as the actions they could be doing. And he goes into each degree of action and some examples. Moving on to the next chapter, average is a failing formula. So I remember in this one, he is very deliberate about not taking the path of least resistance every time. You need to go above and beyond what average is in your mind and other people's minds, and that's going to separate you from the pack. I love the mindset books, but again, chapter 9, he goes into 10X goals, and some of these 10X goals are, he doesn't want you to keep them realistic. He wants you to extend past your limits. And he says you and your goals are manipulated by your surroundings. So being in an environment that's not going to be conducive to success is going to ultimately help you fail. He says set 10X targets, align them with your other purposes, write them down every day. A lot of goal-oriented books, Think and Grow Rich, Power of One More. They talk about writing down your goals more frequently, not just once a year, not just biannually, writing them every single day or before you go to sleep. Chapter 10, he says competition is for sissies. If competition is healthy, then domination is immunity. Great quote from that section. He talks about information-assisted selling, never comparing yourself when you're in a competing market. You want to do everything you can to dominate your sector. So rather than focusing on the people that are quote unquote your competition, focus on the things that they're not doing. And I like that he says that, because so many people in sales worry about what everyone else is doing instead of controlling their day to day. If you control your activities, that's one thing I've learned from my mentor and colleague is, I even wrote his name down next to the section because it made me think of him. We never compete with other people. We do everything to dominate our sector. And Grant does that very well. And he says in quotes here, I'm not a competitor. I am the space. So that's a really great one too. In chapter 11, Grant talks about breaking out of the middle class. Really, it ties back to that chapter about being average. He says that a lot of people like aim for the middle class and they think that that's successful. But, when you aim for something, oftentimes we fall short of that aim. And so if you aim for something much higher, you're likely to end somewhere past where you thought was originally possible. So he kind of really just goes into what the understanding is of the middle class, what income levels of the middle class actually are and what they look like. And he kind of makes you get introspective as like, what do you think the middle class is based on the data presented? He talks in chapter 12, obsession isn't a disease, it's a gift. I mean, just my spirit animal right now. He's speaking like Kobe Bryant, Mamba mentality, obsessing over, being a man that's possessed, just like, domination of one's thoughts or feelings by a persistent idea. That's the dictionary definition of obsessed. And then he just really drills this idea home. Countless truly successful people agree with the sentiment that their careers do not feel like work, but rather something they love to do. That is obsession at its best. That's how I feel about real estate, guys. I love real estate. I am obsessed. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to be unrelenting. And I hope you are too. And Grant just really channels this feeling and sentiment to the max, to the 10x. Chapter 13, he talks about going all in, overcommitting, and I love how he does that. He's kind of a full tilt guy. He's really just not a lukewarm type of person. So everything he's writing about, he's talking about going all in. What do members of society say about this, behavior? He talks about like people discouraging, people that are hyper successful because it makes them feel uncomfortable. Why is the reason sales people fail? He talks about some of those best practices and worst practices. And then chapter 14, expand, never contract. He actually used a real example of a time where the market was slowing and people were kind of like now, actually, it's a good example, is like his company had two choices. He could either scale back or he could expand. And rather than retreating, he expanded his company when a lot of people were doing the opposite. Diving into chapter 15, he says something really cool here that I liked. I learned this the hard way after achieving a lot of success and then resting on my laurels. This is a commonly made mistake. Don't do it. Keep stacking wood until the fire is so hot and burns so brightly that not even your competitors or market changes can put your fire out. Your fire has to continue to be stoked, and that means more wood, more fuel, and in your case, more actions. Freaking love that chapter. Only the paranoid survive. Success tends to bless those who are most committed to giving it the most attention. Again, I read this one before. It's somewhat like a lawn or a garden. No matter how green it gets or beautiful the flowers, you must continue to tend to it. So in the end of this chapter, he asks, what's the fire you've always wanted to start and add wood to? What 3 things could you add wood to that fire? How can you get support from in order to continue stoking your fire? So reaching out to people that are like-minded that are going to help you out. Chapter 16, fear is the great indicator. So what scares you? These are usually ideas, hunches, inklings toward action that you should listen to. Our subconscious mind comes out a lot. And if something scares you, I highly recommend going to it. This podcast scared me, but I love every second of it. And I think it's really opening my mind up to new opportunities, meeting new people, and just really engaging with the concepts in all the books. So chapter 17, The Myth of Time Management. This one's kind of interesting. He talks about goal setting and prioritization of goals and all kinds of things in this chapter. But how much time are you at work each day? How much time do you spend on wasteful activities? What are your time wasters? And basically becoming more self-aware of the things you're wasting. Reminded me a lot of the book Atomic Habits. It's on my shelf here. That's, spoiler alert, that's going to be one of the books I review. Really just good information in chapter 17. Moving on to chapter 18, Criticism is a Sign of Success. In my own personal life, I know that anytime I'm in the right direction, that's when I start getting criticized more often, whether it's constructive or maybe it's people questioning why you're doing something. I think that that's always that's a positive indicator. So I like getting criticism. I like getting questioned, but he talks about it in a very deliberate, kind of like in your face, if you're not first, you're last way from his last book. He talks about it a lot, but basically to wrap that chapter up, he asks, what have you learned about your own criticism after you read the chapter? What criticisms do you like to hear from people and why? And then, he asks you to give 3 examples of when you've seen people go from criticizing others to admiring them. Kind of like, at first it seems like they're doing something crazy, and then once they're successful, it doesn't seem so crazy. Chapter 19, Customer Satisfaction is the Wrong Target. It sounds counterintuitive to people that have worked in the sales service industry. I know that, you make the client at the center and focus of everything you do. At my job, that's paramount. However, he says that making your primary focus, commanding attention, and generating customers before you worry about making them happy. I think that that's loaded a little bit. I think that that's a little bit opinionated, but hard to argue with somebody as successful as Grant. So I think that it ties into like the competition aspect of, dominating the sector. Well, you can't dominate if all you care about is making one customer happy. You have to get a bunch of customers first and then worry about making them happy after you've attained them, after you've reached a certain number of book of business. It's just a different way of looking at it, I think. Talks about, like, have you ever been surveyed by a company that you didn't buy something from? So sometimes when he doesn't close a sale, which isn't very often, he'll ask them why they didn't buy. And oftentimes he's able to turn that around and either get them to buy or use that on the next prospect. So, he goes into why businesses fail, how you can use those survey questions to your acquisition benefit. Chapter 20 talks about omnipresence. So the word omnipresence conveys the concept of being everywhere in all places at all times. Can you imagine what it'd be like if you, your brand, and your company could be everywhere all the time, and how much power this would give you? So it seems like he is implementing this in his business plan. He is everywhere on social media and on the news and in interviews and books and all kinds of content online. So love this chapter. Just kind of like talks about Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Google, Starbucks, Philip Morris, AT&T, Lazy Boy, Bank of America, Walt Disney, Fox TV, Apple, Ford, Visa, Amex, Macy's, Walmart, Best Buy, like all these companies that have this kind of presence everywhere. Talks about like individuals like Oprah, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, some former presidents, Elvis, the Beatles, and kind of like all these people had in common was their omnipresence in the markets that they were in. Chapter 21, all about excuses. So again, one of the quotes here, excuses are never the reason for why you did or didn't do something. They're just a revision of the facts that you make up in order to help yourself feel better about what happened or didn't. So I love that he's just not one of these people that accepts excuses. So he talks about what the difference is between an excuse and a reason is. In the end of the chapter, what are the two things you know about excuses now? Just kind of making you aware of your own excuses. And this made me more aware of some of the things I do. So again, that kind of self-reflection piece was great in that chapter. One of the last chapters here might be the last one, actually. Chapter 22, successful or unsuccessful, having a can-do attitude, believing that you'll figure it out, focusing on opportunities, loving challenges, seek to solve problems, persist until you're successful, taking risks, be unreasonable, be dangerous, create wealth, readily take action. He says the unsuccessful talk about a plan for action, but never quite get around to doing what they claim to be, that they're going to do. Always say yes to opportunities, habitually commit to things, go all the way, focus on the present and right now. One of my favorite quotes, page 172, procrastination is the ultimate weakness. Damn, love this freaking quote. I resonate with this quote a lot in my own life because for many years, procrastination was my ultimate weakness. And now I think I've turned it on its head. I just start doing actionable things. And now procrastination is just a word. It's no longer a choice. Demonstrate courage. He says, embrace change, determine and take the right approach, break traditional ideas. He says the most successful people are looking to create traditions of their own, not follow already established ones. My wife and I talk about this all the time. Is like with our children, we want to create traditions and not follow established ones. So it says, do not be a prisoner of thinking agreed upon by others. Love that. Be goal-oriented, be on a mission, have a high level of motivation, be interested in results, have big goals and dreams, which is the foundation of the 10X rule. Create your own reality, commit first, figure out later, be highly ethical. He says, if you don't go to work every single day and do everything within your power to succeed, then you're stealing from your family, your future, and the company for which you work. Be interested in the group, be dedicated to continuous learning. I have to share this one. Page 183, he says the most successful CEOs are reported to read an average of 60 books and attend more than 6 conferences per year, whereas the average American worker reads an average of less than 1 book a year and makes 319 times less income. So what I took away from this was I need to read more. And I think this podcast is going to keep me committed to that concept. It says to be uncomfortable, reach up in relationships, be disciplined, and introspectively at the end of this chapter, it says, what do you need to work on more without looking? Name 5 traits of successful people and their counterparts. Really easy to do after you read this section. So finally, in chapter 23, he says, getting started with the 10X method, a rule. He has 6 items here. It says, do not reduce your goals as you write them down. Talking about the goals, you just kind of keep going and write them all down. Don't get lost in the details of how to accomplish them. Ask yourself, what actions can I take today to move me toward these goals? take whatever actions you come up with, regardless of what they are or how you feel, and do not prematurely value the outcome of your actions. Go back each day and review the list. And he says this several times in the book, how he reviews his goals daily. And this is how it kind of perpetuates his own success. And he actually lists his goals out here in the book. He writes them as if he has already accomplished them. I think that a lot of goal writing and setting books adopt this principle. It contradicts actually Ed Milet's goal setting techniques. Acting like you've already achieved it can maybe mess with your head, but Grant argues the opposite, that acting like you've already achieved it gives you like power over it in a way. So I think that both of these men are in the same wavelength. They're just maybe look at it a different way. I know I've seen Ed and Grant on the same interview before. I believe it was on a TikTok is where I saw it originally, but it was a really powerful interview. So that kind of ends the book as far as the chapters are. He has a little bit of glossary terms in the back. He has an index, and he has other titles, but I would say overall, the 10X Rule is a great read. I would highly recommend entrepreneurs, business people, and real estate people alike to read this book. I know Grant does several conferences per year and mastermind events, things of that nature. I think it would be really great to go to one of these. So if I do, I'd love to report on that and let you guys know how it goes. But that's going to be it for today's episode. Looking forward to next week. I'm going to be doing another real estate centered book here. I know they're not always going to be real estate books, but I promise that they're always going to have real estate ideas in connection with them. And I think that this 10X Rule book ties to real estate directly, because if you apply the principles in this book, I think that in this competitive industry, and maybe the market's softening now, but I think that it's going to be advantageous to apply these principles to the current market conditions to keep you competitive and win some more deals. So, I'm going to try a tagline here. Something me and my wife say all the time. If you've ever seen The Office, Daryl Philbin is trying to teach Michael Scott some like urban slang. And so he tells him like bippity boppity. Well, my wife and I have coined the phrase bippity boppity investment property. So on that note, have a great day, and I will see you next week. Thank you.